This is your Chargers linebacker, Deion Henley, and you're tuning in with Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. If this is your first time tuning in to the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein, the initial 53-man roster has been released for the Chargers. And before you can say anything, Dan, I'm going to beat you to it this time because the roster being trimmed or cut, if you will, down to 53 has been released today by the Los Angeles Chargers. And I was talking to Dan about this off the air shortly after the list was released. This is one of the more surprising cut down lists I can recall in recent memory for the Chargers. Not from the standpoint of certain personnel, but in terms of position-wise, how much they kept at certain roles. It's great to see the amount of undrafted free agents that were ultimately kept that ended up playing their way onto the roster. But there is a lot to dissect from this initial 53, and we're also going to talk about how things might end up changing in the next 24 hours. So don't hold on to this 53-man roster too close to the chest because, as Stephen A. Smith likes to say, it's always fluid, especially as it relates to this time of the year. Dan Wolkenstein, how are you? Welcome to everyone that is in the chat. Love the Hawaiian look, by the way, Mr. Wolkenstein.
Appreciate it. Another year around the sun. Made it through. I'm great, man. Happy cut day. Jake sweatshirt through the short straw.
I did that intentionally.
I appreciate it. You just wanted to show off those swollen biceps of yours.
No, I wanted to get ahead of you. I wanted to get ahead of you so that you couldn't be the one to drop the pun. So okay, I got you.
I'll let the folks in the chat help me out with this one, aside from the banner that's already on the bottom of the screen. Folks in the chat, you have done this before. If not, welcome to Chargers Unleashed Live. We got lots of things in store for you today. We'll go through the 53-man roster by position. We'll go through some of the surprise cuts. We'll go through some of the possible free agents to target. Obviously, we'll get to the Q&A from all of you. If you have any topics, questions, thoughts, put them in the chat, and we will do our best to get to them as we go through. If you have not done so already, please, while Jake's yapping, hit that subscribe, hit the like, tell a friend, tell Jake how sexy he looks in his cutoff sweatshirt. Black, not black.
See, now I'm never wearing this shit ever again.
Everyone tell Jake how good he looks, okay?
Never wearing this shit again.
Okay, how about this? Everyone tell us what you're drinking in the chat because Jake is drinking something. Looks like apple juice. Just kidding. Did you see how quickly you just judged me for saying apple juice?
You watch your mouth.
Clearly, I've got a toddler in that house. Jake, how are we doing today?
Doing just fine. Today warranted a little bit of this. And by the way, this is Highland single malt Scotch whiskey. I promise that was my first sip, so don't judge me. No, Dan, it's on top of a lot of things that we got to dissect today. There are some bittersweet cuts, again, surprising cuts that ended up being made. And again, there's just a lot as it relates to this roster. Certain positions that the Chargers ended up keeping way more of than we initially would have predicted. Again, 3 undrafted free agents end up making this roster. They keep 5 edge rushers. As of now, they only have 8 offensive linemen. I would bet money that that's going to change here in the next 24 hours. We got some Najee Harris updates in a big way in a multitude of fashions. A lot of people were impacted by the Najee Harris news today. But let's kick it off. Let's start this thing. What do you want to start with?
All right, Jake. So I think what we should do is quickly just run through this so we can kind of blow through what the 53-man roster looks like. And while we go through position, we can kind of touch on the big rocks and then kind of go through some of these questions and comments and takes as we continue on through the show. And we'll kind of sprinkle in some of the questions as well. Jake, I think we knew all this was pretty set in stone who the Chargers quarterbacks were going into the season. And Trey Lance kind of ran away with it. Taylor Heineke was waived. Chargers keeping 2 quarterbacks on the roster. Surprise! Justin Herbert, QB1. Trey Lance, QB number 2. I think Trey Lance gives a tremendous upside. We'll talk about the specifics here in a bit. Again, just to go briefly over what these position groups look like. First surprise, Jake, comes to the running back room. One, there were like 5 surprises here. 1, Najee Harris taken off the PUP list. Now, Ortiz, apparently, true to his word. And maybe we see him week 1. Not sure. Hassan Haskins, we all knew. O'Brien Hampton, we all knew. No Rocket Sanders. No Kamani Vidal. No Naheem Miller-Hines. Chargers only going 3 running backs here. Jake, thoughts?
I got to say, the Najee Harris thing surprised me. Even after Joe Ortiz comments, I thought to myself, I was like, okay, well, that's encouraging. But at the same time, Najee hasn't practiced. He hasn't practiced since this incident that happened to him on the 4th of July. And the most that we have seen from him is just light jogging around the field, still with the weighted vest on top of the jersey, visor over the face mask. And we really just haven't
patch
seen
on
anything.
The memes.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, it's while it was encouraging news from Joe Ortiz, like I would have bet money that he would have started out on the NFI list and the Chargers would have kept, still probably 3 running backs, maybe a different combination for how I viewed it personally, but that's how I figured it was going to go. So Najee Harris being active from this standpoint and seemingly ready to play week 1 impacted a lot of individuals as it related to the running back depth chart. As Dan alluded, or as Dan said, no Rocket Sanders, no Kamani Vidal. Like I said in my tweet earlier, Dan, whether Najee was going to be active for week 1 or not, I didn't agree with the Rocket Sanders move. You talk about the 3 undrafted free agents that ended up making this roster, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. I thought Rocket Sanders should have been included in that conversation. I thought what he did, after missing the Hall of Fame game in those final 3 preseason games, I thought he did a hell of a job. I thought he displayed so many good traits as it relates to his patience, his vision, his burst up the middle, obviously being the lead running back in 2 games for the Chargers. Week 3 was not a good game for any of the Chargers running backs, seemingly because the offensive line just couldn't do anything against the Rams. So that game was kind of a wash. But in the 2 games that really stood out for Rocket for both the 2nd and the 4th week of the Chargers preseason, I thought he did a great job, Dan. In my opinion, I thought that he earned his way onto the roster. Now, you just have to hope when waiver claims comes or passes that the Chargers are able to put him back on the practice squad. Now, also because special teams is going to be a big part of this conversation as we go through a lot of these roster spots. Say what you will about Kamani Vidal, special teams is where he's going to find himself valuable. And as we'll talk about certain other players that are still on this roster because of their special teams ability, that may give him a leg up, but we'll see about that.
No surprise at the wide receiver position, Keenan Allen, Trey Harris, Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnson, KLS, and Darius Davis. Brendan Rice, you saw the news, was waived. You saw a few other folks as well. This, I think, was probably the least kept secret. This was a pretty easy no-brainer. There's a bunch of folks in the chat talking about offensive line, talking about the trade that happened today, talking about UDFAs. We're going to get to all of those, I promise. Be patient. Keep sipping on the whiskey or the water or the shrooms, as I've seen in the comments. We'll get to there in a minute. I'm asking a question, though, as we kind of go through. Marinate on this, fans and Jake. What was the biggest surprise of today? Whether it was cut, whether it was trade, whether it was injury news, what was the biggest surprise of this roster so far? Jake, I'll give you a couple minutes to think about it. Let's move on.
I already got it, but go on.
Okay, we'll move on real quick. Tucker Fisk, Will Disley, Oronde Gadsden, Tyler Conklin are your tight ends. This went pretty much chalk. There was some talk that maybe it will be Tucker Fisk getting the short straw, ending up on practice squad. Nope, that's how it stood. Chargers trade. 7th round of 2027 for Austin Deculus. Now, Jake, full transparency, no idea who the hell that was. Jake, do you? Tell us about him. You're on mute.
Sorry.
Jake didn't know who he was either.
When you put yourself on mute, because you don't want to cough into the microphone, then you forget you're on mute. It happens like this sometimes. Admittedly, no, Dan. I was not familiar with him prior to the trade that the Chargers ended up pulling off today. Again, it's a 2027 conditional 7th round pick that ended up going back to Houston for Austin Deculus. A little bit of history on him, former 6th round pick. This is actually his second stint with the Houston Texans, has previously spent time with the Jets and the Saints, which I'm sure there was some familiarity there with assistant GM Chad Alexander from during that period of time. So I'm sure that there was some inside knowledge of him, which is where this trade came from. Now, the good thing is, as it relates to what Austin Deculus brings to the table, is he brings you a little bit of offensive line versatility, possibility of being a swing tackle option with the ability to play both left and right tackle. As we get into talking about the offensive line, there are not many moves that you're going to find that are out there with the offensive line market for the players that have been waived that you're going to say to yourself, yeah, that guy is going to come in and be a starter in this Chargers offensive lineup immediately. The best thing that you're doing right now, and again, we'll talk about this more in context, is you're elevating the floor of your depth, which the depth of the Chargers offensive line, as we saw through 4 preseason games, was about the worst that you could possibly get. Hence why they only have 8 offensive linemen on the roster right now, subject to change. There's a lot of churning that needed to be done in the depth of this position, Dan. And it was unfortunate that nobody outside of some of the bigger names in Jamari Sawyer and Andre James that could really solidify their roster spot. Branson Taylor is another name on this list that ended up being cut today, and that was a former 5th round pick that you had there. So, yeah, we'll have a lot to talk about the offensive line today, I assure you.
Austin Deculus. Now, if you want to be selective, Jake, he had a 76.1 pass blocking grade last year. Feels great. Now, minor detail.
How many snaps?
Minor detail. Just week 18 of last year and a whole 29 total snaps, 11 of which were pass blocking. Don't look at his other seasons or preseason numbers because there's a lot of red and yellow. But this might be a traits pick. This might be a traits trade. Hoping that we can get some upside there. Again, I don't think this is going to move the needle much for the starters. To your point, I think this is more for depth. And as we get to the offensive line here, before we do that, Jake, actually, Athir, $5 donation. Athir, appreciate you, my baby. It's been too long. $5 donation. I love the Herbert navies that he's got on right there, too. Joe Alt, Mekhi Becton, Andre James, Zion Johnson. Oops, Andre James, that needs to be Bradley Bozeman. I apologize. And Trey Pipkins, Jamari Sawyer, Andre James, and Austin Deculus as your backups. Jake, I think there was a couple surprises here. One from the trade, the other from the cut. Which would you like to go first?
I appreciate you changing this up in real time, Dan, because you also had Mekhi Becton and Zion Johnson in their opposite guard spots. So
look, I'm here to please.
It's all right. You were in a rush to do this. It's okay. You had a lot on your plate. Rashawn Slater changed everything as it relates to this roster. Here's what I will say about the offensive line. Given that this is the starting 5 that we're going to see here to begin the season, and this is, of course, pending anything that the Chargers end up doing. And again, Dan and I have a list of potential offensive line targets that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. If there is a chance that you bring anyone in that has starter capability, and I'm talking whether it's through a trade or whether it's through some of these waiver claims from these guys that are available out there, if there is any opportunity for this line to change, it's going to happen after week 3. Because let me tell you something. Back when we were going through our initial predictions, it was much different when you could think of this offensive line with Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt as your bookends. To have Trey Harris at right tackle, to now have to start off the season against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Trey Pipkins.
Yes. What did I say?
Trey Harris, but I knew you meant.
Thank you. With Trey Pipkins at right tackle. To start off against Kansas City Chiefs with Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, to then go to Denver. Or is it Denver or is it the Raiders. Excuse me, the Raiders.
Raiders.
To then go up against Max Crosby. If I was Max Crosby, I would not spend a minute on Joe Alt's side. I wouldn't. I'd be coming from Trey Pipkin's side every single chance that I get. And then you get the Denver Broncos week 3, who have a just ridiculous defensive front. That's going to be a hell of a litmus test for not only Trey Pipkins, but to see how Bradley Bozeman and Zion Johnson are able to hold up. And if there's any changes that are going to take place as it relates to this starting 5, it should be on a short leash, and you should be able to figure that out in the first 3 weeks. Now, that might not be the best news that you want to hear. It may do something to your initial predictions as far as where you thought that the Chargers were going to come out of in the first 3 weeks, having all 3 of those games be divisional games. But damn, that is a hard litmus test now when you also consider that Mekhi Becton is just getting back to practicing. We've talked ad nauseum about Zion Johnson and Bradley Bozeman. I just really didn't think that was going to be the combination that we were going to start off with again. We'll cross our fingers to hope that that's improved. But whether it's a rotation piece of Jamari Sawyer in there, whether there is going to be a change with Andre James coming in, you're gonna figure this out pretty damn quick. You're gonna have to, and it's gonna be obvious. You're not gonna be able to mask those offensive line deficiencies that you were able to do against a weaker schedule last year. It's gonna be obvious in the first 3 weeks what this offensive line is about.
Yeah, Branson Taylor was on the Chargers for a whole 4 months. 6th round pick this year, cut by the Los Angeles Chargers team. And Jake, I think Forgotten Locale has a comment here. 3 very tough opponents right at the gate. Should be a good test where we stand. There's a comment here previously about tip of the spear, yet they only have 8 linemen on the roster. 9 if you would have included Rashawn Slater, of course. But, yeah, I mean, you got to think that they're not done. There's no way.
There's no way.
There's no way that they are done. And there's some names, again, we'll talk about some names to look for as we go through here. Again, first off, we're just kind of talking about the guys that are on the roster. Real quick, let's get to the defensive side. Khalil Mack, Tuli Tubelotu, Bud Dupree, Caleb Murphy makes the 53, one of 3 UDFAs to make the 53 this year, along with Kyle Kennard. Caleb Murphy far outplayed Kyle Kennard. Kyle Kennard, there's a comment in here. I totally agree. Probably going to get that a Boygby 2024 feel, unless we see some improvements from him. But Jake, 5 defensive ends, so edge, we called it, and Caleb Murphy made it impossible to not keep him on the initial 53. Again, initial 53 here. This can all change. It's all fluid, as they say. But that's how you put a stamp on a preseason. And that's how you impact a team and make it almost impossible to take him off. Now, the one thing I will say, I see some comments in here about Tony Jefferson. There's some nuance to some of these cuts, waves, depending on tenure of these players, health, etc. And I do think that, I think it was Braden Fajoko, former Charger, went on Twitter and kind of talked about the gymnastics that GMs have to go through sometimes to kind of keep people on and off. Tony Jefferson will pick who Tony Jefferson wants to play with. And it sounds like he and this Chargers team are well connected. He's kind of the heartbeat of this team, especially on defense from a veteran perspective and a presence. So I wouldn't be surprised. And I'm fully kind of expecting him to stay in LA. But again, just like let this thing play out. I know folks were excited about Rocket Sanders, myself included, Jake included as well. But if we take our heart out of this for a second and you think about some of the impact that these players had, we'll talk about the other UDFAs that made it. But you look at a Marlowe Wax, you look at an Eric Rogers, you look at RJ Mickens 6th round, you look at Caleb Murphy and what those guys did. And you look at Rocket Sanders. Rocket Sanders was not on that level of those guys. Furthermore, Rocket Sanders has those 2 above him that are far better, plus Hassan Haskins, who's special teams, which he is not. So Rocket Sanders, I believe, has the potential that everybody's excited about. And you see the traits that everybody's excited about. And you see those glimpses But if you talk about volume production that can't go unnoticed, as much as we want to say it, or as much as you don't want to say it, like, he didn't have that. Excitement, sure. But there was no 2024 Tony Jefferson. There was no 2025 Marlowe Wax game, 2025 Caleb Murphy, Eric Rogers, Nikko Reed. Like, those guys made it hard. And I honestly don't think I could say that for some of the guys that were cut. So off my soapbox for a second. Just want to call that out. Real quick. Interior defensive line. Jamari Caldwell, Tito Ogmania, Justin Aboigbe, Deshaun Hand, Naquan Jones, and Tyir Tart. Delshon Phillips, not on this list as we go through here and continue. But Jake, this is the starting 6 in defensive line. No surprises really here, right?
You also have Scott Madlock, basically your two-way player
Flex,
who's going to rotate within
fullback.
This defensive line.
Steve O'Klotz, no longer fullback, was waived as well. So 7, if you want to include Scott Matlock. Justin Aboigbe improved. We've seen Tito has been getting runs with the 1s so far. Naquan Jones looked real good in that last preseason game. Jamari Caldwell has been everything and more per the lips of Jesse Minter. Tyir Tart stays. I mean, a lot of people are calling this the deepest position group on the roster. Moving
There's an argument to be made for that. There is an argument to be made for that. I think it's probably one of the more versatile defensive lines that the Chargers have had in the interior, where you have so many guys that can be versatile or just really good at one thing, and then you've got a mix of guys now that are capable of both getting after it as a pass rusher or against the run. I personally love what the Chargers have done with the interior defensive line, and I think it's going to surprise a lot of people.
Rocket will not clear waivers, says Danger Close 619. I bet you he does. Bet you he does. If you're an opposing team, 31, and you go put on the highlights, or you go look at the box scores of Rocket Sanders, what are you looking at?
Dan, put on his college tape.
He didn't get drafted.
Doesn't matter. Put on his college tape.
It does. He literally didn't get drafted, and 32 teams had 7 rounds. Just saying. Like, I know we get invested and we get excited and we talk about these guys.
And Nikko Reed and Eric Rogers.
Again,
Wax.
Whole nother level for those guys. Eric Rogers had, what, 3 picks in one game?
2 interceptions that only ended up really showing out in that second preseason, but great for him because it was a great showing.
Of course. Yeah, again, a fumble recovery too.
But still, you take that one preseason game that ended up landing him a roster spot. You can make an argument that Rocket Sanders ended up being your most productive, consistent running back throughout the preseason. Now, I get it. Special teams, he can't hold a candle to some of the other guys that are on this list, and sometimes that's the X factor. And again,
he couldn't hold a guy to the one guy that wasn't on that list. Also, Kamani Vidal.
Caleb Murphy, on top of being an outstanding pass rusher that he was during the preseason, the first play of preseason in that Hall of Fame game came on special teams, and Caleb Murphy forced the fumble that gave the Chargers the ball to ultimately score. That's how preseason kicked off for the Chargers. We'll talk more about I know a lot of people have had comments about Jasir Taylor over the last couple of weeks, but
we're getting there.
Again, you can agree with it or disagree with it, and either way is fine. But you have to understand that in that locker room of coaches, Ryan Fitkin's voice is heard. And much like in the way that, remember the days of Kasim Osgood? You don't really remember him for his offensive play, but you damn sure remember him when he was a gunner on special teams. And that's kind of the same note here. So, again, we'll get more into this.
Linebackers. So, a surprise out of left field today. And I think not necessarily the headline of injury for Junior Colson, but year-long season-ending injury for Junior Colson is tough, man. And as a man, person to person, like, I can't even imagine what that's like, essentially having 2 years cut short because of injuries. Like, that sucks. And he was a clean prospect. He is, like, tailor-made for this defense, quite literally. Played in this defense under Jesse Minter, like, has all of the traits. And he just seems like he's always been behind the 8 ball. Yes, he didn't look great in the preseason. He looked better than last year, but like he's not. I don't know what did they come out what the injury was. I didn't see it.
No,
they think so.
If
it's already season long, that's brutal.
The only indication that we got was when Harbaugh was at the podium and he was asked if, when Colson wasn't practicing leading up to that last preseason, if he had re-aggravated his earlier preseason injury. There was really just no context to it. And even Harbaugh just basically said, no, I can't answer that. I'm not the team doctor, which is his go-to answer that he normally says in those situations. But that's pretty much the extent of it. But that was kind of a surprise, Dan, because the Marlowe wax news came early before the 53-man roster was released. Mm-hmm. And then you start doing the math in your head and you're like, oh, damn, are they going to keep 5 linebackers?
Yeah.
And then you get the news of Junior Colson being out for the year. It's just like, I think from a mentality standpoint, again, Junior Colson knows this defense more than anybody, but the road that he has had to go through since being drafted,
sucks.
Going through appendicitis, the lingering injuries that basically followed him all of last season. He essentially had a red shirt 2024 because he really did not get a chance to practice much at all. And then he was very slow on picking things up throughout training camp. He had a couple of good flashes in game, but still not where he needed to be. And then to have this injury that takes him out for the entirety of the year, it's just that's going to be a tough road mentally and physically for him to get back to where he needs to be going into his 3rd year next year.
Derek says Colson is a draft bust, and a few people have also agreed with that. Guys, come on. He had essentially a redshirt freshman season with the Chargers, and then had half a preseason and training camp, and then is hurt for the year. Now, if you want to go through technicalities and say, well, all we care about is what's on the field, sure, but I think it's a little early to put the bust logo on that. Like, I'm not there. I think it's very different. Let's see. Someone's definitely smoking in the chat. Not sure who that is. Let's see. The college level coach is coaching pretty damn good in the NFL, says Jeremy L. In reference to the college level and the NFL level are 2 very different levels. I think he's alluding to Junior Colson. And Jeremy goes over the top. The college level coach, and I'll say coaches because the whole defensive crew, pretty damn good in the NFL. Jake, let's get to linebackers. Dan Henley, Denzel Perryman, Troy Dye, Marlowe wax on, if you will. Mr. Miyagi brought him in. Marlowe wax balled out, and he single-handedly wrecked shop in that 3rd preseason game alone. Troy Dye, I think, has been very impressive. One of the linchpins for special teams. Nick Niemann, by the way, got cut across the NFL. Curious to see what happens there. Jesse Minter likes him. Denzel Perryman has been a beast, back healthy, and then we know Dan Henley looking like he's going to be a stud in year 3. Anything you want to add here before we move to the next position?
No, congratulations to Marlowe wax.
Yeah.
You just talked about finishing preseason strong, even in a loss against the 49ers. He was one of the standout players, both offensively and defensively, where he was able to position himself, rushing the passer, causing turnovers. Hell of a showing by him. And again, you just add to this list of UDFAs that ended up making that much traction in certain positions that you thought were already deep. If you took Marlowe wax out of this graphic just for a second, and you still hypothetically had Junior Colson, it was such an uphill battle for him to make the roster.
Mm-hmm.
And remove Junior Colson's injury. He did everything that he needed to do, and congratulations to him, because I think he's going to add a lot of instincts and athleticism to this linebacker group, which you could say with Dan Henley is peak athleticism for the linebacker position. Now you just maybe have added just another level to that.
Let's go to the next position group. We've got the cornerbacks, I believe. 7 corners on this roster so far. Again, initially, Tarheeb Still, Dante Jackson, Cam Hart, Benjamin St. Juste, Jesse Taylor, Nikko Reed, and Eric Rogers. I think the surprises or the conversation starters are clearly the back half of this. Benjamin St. Juste, a lot of people aren't really fans of. I think this is one of those scheme fit traits type that they're trying to get under the wing of Jesse Minter and Steve Klingscale. Jesse Taylor, we've seen a lot about Jesse Taylor. I honestly don't even know if there's much more to be said other than special teams matters and initial 53. Nikko Reed, Eric Rogers, Nikko Reed, Jake, take a bow, my friend. Literally, I think within an hour of the draft ending, I get a text from you saying, watch out for Nikko Reed. He might be my favorite. And then fast forward, all he did was ball out every single time. And he was probably one of the top 5 performers of the entire Chargers roster during the preseason. So Jake, kudos, golf clap to you.
I appreciate it. I'm not taking any of the flowers here. He just did everything that he needed to do to make the roster. And honestly, there were some aspects of it where I was even shocked that he was playing that good at that period of time, even leading up to the first preseason game, and then to have the Hall of Fame game that he had. And then even after, just going through a little bit of a ding injury and missing some time, closing out the San Francisco 49ers game the way he did with pass breakups, that first Hall of Fame game, I've said this repeatedly now, I thought he was going to hit for the cycle because obviously he had the interception, the pick 6. He was making tackles in the open field, which is what he was great at Oregon. He was making tackles on special teams. He almost had a sack in that game as well in the Hall of Fame game. If we're talking about competitors welcome, and if you're going to reward someone like Wax for making the roster in the way that he did it, Nikko Reed did it in the same fashion. And honestly, the same goes for Eric Rogers, even limited playing time for himself, having that standout game in week 2 of the preseason for the Chargers, and then to get unfortunately hurt on literally just the last play of the game on that kickoff return, and then to miss the final 2 preseason games. Look at the impression that has made. Now, there's some asterisks that need to be in this conversation a little bit, because number one, Dean Leonard, who you do not see a name here, was put on the short-term IR, so he's going to miss the first 4 games of the season, which I think obviously led into the Chargers keeping a little bit more defensive backs. But here's the bittersweet part, Dan. If we're going to look at a position group that within the next 24 hours, if you are going to bring in an offensive lineman, this might be the position group that gets altered a little bit in the trade-off. Now,
real quick,
I'm not predicting anything, but I would hate to see either Nikko Reed or Eric Rogers get sacrificed. But I know that the Chargers offensive line needs depth. And Dan and I were thinking in our final predictions that we were just thinking about weeks ago, we said at maybe best you keep 11 DBs with 6 cornerbacks and 5 safeties. Well, the Chargers kept 12. You kept 7 corners and 5 safeties, which is, I can't remember the last time them even coming close to doing something like that. So this might be the one position, and again, I hate to say it, considering some of the names that we would be talking about, but that might have a change to it if the Chargers ultimately end up getting some more offensive line depth.
Yeah, and there's talks in the chat. Yes, Eric Rogers, as of now, appears to still be going through that injury, and they could do some more gymnastics with this roster and put him on IR, opening up another spot. They could also take away like a Jason Taylor if they see someone else come in. But Nikko Reed, I don't think was going to clear waivers. I know he wasn't drafted, but you can't look that good at a position that is that valuable, the cornerback position, when offense is just exploding. Like, you can't look that good and not get picked up. Eric Rogers, I hope he's good to go. The high ankle sprain isn't bad. He starts week 1. I mean, it's basically will be like 4 or 5 weeks of him, or of healing time for him. But we'll see. But the young nucleus of this Chargers team looks very promising.
Love it.
Cam Hart, Tarheeb Still, Nikko Reed, Eric Rogers, all 4 of those guys studs, or at least high potential for Nikko Reed and Eric Rogers, and Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart when healthy studs. Now, I think this is probably the surprise of the day, and what probably frustrated people the most is the name not on this list, which is Tony Jefferson. Which, how in the blue hell did he not make the roster? Just if we're just basing it off of competitors welcome, all the cliches that you hear from the Chargers team, if we're just basing it off that, makes no damn sense. But with the whole roster gymnastics angle and him being one of the veteran types that can now choose his team immediately, him not being part of the initial 53 does not mean he is going to be on a different team in 2025. I know that is hard to swallow. I know that is hard to just wait and cross fingers and hope for. But Tony Jefferson is a Southern California dude. This Chargers team has raved about him. He's been on mic'd ups. He's was given a chance by Joe Horty. Like, there's a lot of links here. I don't think he's leaving or staying for the money. Like, the dude just loves, clearly he's want to get paid too, but I wouldn't freak out yet about the Tony Jefferson thing. But the names that are on here, Derwin James, Alohi Gilman, no surprise, Elijah Molden. But the two names that, one of which is not a surprise to me because he balled out. I loved RJ Mickens. But Kendall Williamson also makes it a safety / special teamer. Again, 12 DBs make it in total. 2 more than I think either of us thought were going to make it. Jake, thoughts on this room?
Yeah, I think RJ Mickens did what he needed to do. You talk about another versatile chess piece when you have the likes of Derwin James, you can pretty much use him anywhere in the defensive backfield. Dan, RJ Mickens was playing free safety in the box, in the slot, on the defensive line, and he should have come up with a number of different interceptions for as many balls that were thrown his direction throughout the preseason. Unfortunately, just wasn't able to do that. But in terms of what he's been able to provide to you as a young presence at safety to round out this group, I thought he did a hell of a job. A couple things on the Tony Jefferson aspect. That sucked.
Are you in the freak out category? Are you pissed?
I'm not gonna rule him out coming back to the Chargers, because extending some of the words that you just said, he loves football. He is highly respected in that locker room by a number of different guys. I think he loves playing for this team. I think he appreciates the fact that you have to remember where he was at this time last year. He wasn't playing before he ended up doing an open tryout for the Chargers, or before they ended up signing him. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the reason, Dan, that I don't feel as confident that he may return. Again, I'm not ruling it out, and I hope that it ends up happening. But when you see the way that he even opened up the preseason, again, nobody told Tony Jefferson that it was preseason. He plays preseason like it's a regular season game.
So do you think someone's going to show him the bag?
I'm not sure, but in terms of showing the bag,
if
there is an opportunity for him to start and someone gives him that opportunity, because you now have a year of tape and a veteran presence like that, I think he's going to see he could have a lot more interest than what he had last year when he had to go through the same situation. Again, I'm not ruling out the fact that he might not return. I hope that he does, but I think he's going to have a lot more opportunities come his way in the next few days. So we'll see again what churns with this roster, what changes are made, and hopefully Tony Jefferson, the UNC, can return.
I'm crossing fingers, man. I don't see how this team lets it happen. I just don't. An hour ago, Tony Jefferson actually tweeted, it just be motivation for me. I don't take any of it personal. I just put it on tape when I get the opportunity to. It's all love. He's got to be back, right?
He's handled everything with class. Totally. I will say that. Even if he tries to troll the fans, which a couple days ago when we thought originally that he was cut and he was just talking about the Padres game. And then unfortunately, of course, 24 hours later, that he wasn't joking, and that ended up being a reality. So would love to see Tony Jefferson back on this team, even if it is in a rotation with the Chargers keeping 5 safeties. You tell me you got a safety room of Derwin, Elijah Molden, Alohi Gilman, Tony Jefferson, and R.J. Mickens? I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of other people should be happy about that one too.
Special teams. We talked about some of the names on there. We talked about... we didn't talk about J.K. Scott. Didn't talk about Cameron Dicker. We talked about the center. Harris is actually on... He's on IR, I believe.
Long snapper. Josh Harris is on short-term IR, so he's going to miss the first 4 games, which again is probably another reason why Tucker Fisk ended up making the roster, because once he was hurt in that final preseason game, Tucker Fisk was essentially your backup long snapper. So on top of handling some good blocking tight end duties, which Tucker Fisk is good at, and God knows maybe your offensive line is going to need some extra chipping ability in these first 3 weeks, could actually get you through these first 4 weeks of the season in good shape.
Look, I know there's a lot of pushback on the Tony Jefferson stuff. Like, let's let it play out. And a lot of people are talking about, like, oh, well, Kendall Williamson is better and younger. Like, stop. Kendall Williamson is not better than Tony Jefferson at safety. And special teams, maybe. But in my opinion, I think I'm keeping Tony Jefferson over Kendall Williamson. But again, this is the initial 53. Let them do their gymnastics on the back end in the shadows, and we'll see Chef Ortiz hopefully start cooking. Jake, anything else on the roster on who is on the team before we shift focus to a couple of voicemails and shift focus to some outside folks and reinforcements that we could possibly go towards?
I think given the circumstances with certain injuries that befell the Chargers outside of the Tony Jefferson situation, I think the Chargers handled this the closest to the best way possible. The Tony Jefferson one, I have a problem with. The Rocket Sanders one, I have an issue with. I personally think that there's a good chance that both of them could sign elsewhere. But outside of that, I think at the other positions and rewarding certain players that ended up playing their way on the roster, I think they did the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, first off, no chance in hell, I put it on Twitter, but no chance in hell anyone got 53 for 53. No way. No one. This was total curveball. So many curveballs to get to here. It's been a wild ride. And the fact that it took them like an hour and a half after the deadline to finally post it, everyone's like, what the hell? What are we doing? Like, are we doing carrier pigeons? Is it going through freaking hot air balloon? Like, what? Is the fax machine not plugged in?
I know when that 1:00 deadline came around, you're like, okay, well, where's the Chargers official Twitter page? Just going to drop the 53. And then
today,
1:00 turned into 3:30, which then turned into 4:30. And then finally, 3 hours later, we finally got it.
Do we answer this question or do we just let it go?
No. And that's
that both?
That's no to the question. Okay. I'll answer the question. No.
Okay. Triquez Bridges. So 2 Chargers draft picks this year did not make the team. We saw Triquez Bridges. He had a rough preseason. No need to talk through that. Kamani Vidal, I would be surprised if he doesn't end up on the practice squad. Taylor Heineke, same thing. We thought maybe he gets traded. Ended up not happening. Yeah, I think everything else after that we've talked about. Jake, let's get to Robert D for the 7th time has said, Fernando says hot dogs. Asked me to tell you that point.
I think he was meaning corn dogs, but I know exactly what Fernando is talking about.
Oh, I know. I know what we're talking about.
I appreciate the message sent, Robert. Thank you. It's always good to interact with Fernando. He's great.
Beef Talaboy. Uncle Tony will play ball with the practice squad call-ups before having to sign him to the roster or release him. Maybe.
Whichever way it ends up happening, If you start him off and he signs back with the practice squad and he gets an opportunity to be elevated, fine. I just want to see him in the mix because I think he's earned it.
Agreed. First voicemail, Jake. See what they say.
Dan, Jake, this is your boy Hefner.
He is like in the woofer.
Oh, jeez.
Here, pipe down the volume, my friend.
For anybody that still has their hearing, Athir has called into the show.
Thank
What?
you.
What'd you say?
Jeez.
Fan favorite, 53-man.
Self-proclaimed fan favorite. You're not doing yourself any favors, Athir.
Roster is already set. Let's go. Road to San Francisco will start Friday, September 5th. Cannot wait. Love you. I will send us game prediction too.
Thank you for calling in. Appreciate you.
I was waiting for him to give some type of prediction because he's given predictions almost every other time that he's called in and left a voicemail for us. He's made predictions on the Chargers Super Bowl being this year, Justin Herbert winning the MVP. I think it was Amari Hampton winning Rookie of the Year. He was just running the table as it relates to all the accolades for the Chargers players this year. So I was expecting him to drop one there, but I guess he's going to make us wait until closer to the season opener.
Yes. Next voicemail. Again, you can call anytime. 323-902-7586 is the number to the Chargers Unleashed hotline. Again, you can call in whenever you want. Try to keep it under 30 seconds. By the way, animals these Chargers fans are. We're up to 1,000 folks on the live stream, and it's almost 8 o'clock on a random Tuesday. Love you. Jake, this is fun.
It's when it's the best time.
And this is the best.
It's the best times.
This is the best crop that we have of us in our little boxes because you don't see the cutoff sleeves. See this? Like you would think that you had a whole sweatshirt on.
You still found a way to get it in there, didn't you? Sick bastard.
Jake's just like hiding like this.
Like I told you, you're never gonna see this again.
Bullshit. We're not gonna see this again. Next voicemail, Jake. Let's hear what they have to say.
Jake, Dan, what's going on, gentlemen? How you guys doing? So, seeing the 53 roster, very unfortunate with Junior Colson. It looks like a pretty whiff draft pick that Joe Ortiz picked. He's not looking so good. Thank God we got Marlon Max, whatever, Wax. So, yeah, Junior Colson, unfortunately, he started to look like a bust. I mean, we'll see. But next year is probably his last year with us. But right now, I'm not reacting to stuff. I know right now we've been waiting for O-line to this Joe Ortiz. So I'm waiting for him to bump up his O-line and stuff, switch people. If he doesn't do shit, then this team, I'm not really looking very high for this team. I think this team's going to be in third place if they do not change the O-line, get some depth. That's all my main focus is. So if Joe Ortiz does not do anything with his O-line, then he is not ready to win the playoffs this year. We're not going to playoffs this year. We're a third team in division this year, I believe. So, Joe Ortiz, I'm waiting for you to do some O-line picks, man. But let me know what you guys thought about it. Thank you guys. Both up. And as always, fuck the Raiders.
We had to go 51 minutes.
Such a great sign off. Love it.
Oh, man. And this was an accidental segue. I did not listen to that voicemail. It just happened to be the perfect transition. Jake, if Joe Ortiz does not do some offensive line work between now and week 1 in Brazil, Chargers fans worldwide, including in Brazil, are going to riot. I think Chargers fans would have lots of questions if the tip of the spear talk goes down the shitter with just 8 guys on their offensive line. So, Jake, we put together some names, and credit to you, Jake, of some offensive line reinforcement possibilities, both interior offensive line, center guard, as well as tackle / flexibility opportunities. Jake, I think Cole Strange, Leo Collins are probably my 2 in terms of just fits, maybe. We've seen the connections to the Kansas City guy, but Jake, go through this list and your thoughts on what you want and why.
Yeah, you still have a number of options here in terms of where the Chargers could possibly elevate, again, their depth. None of these guys, in my opinion, with maybe the exception of one, gives you a possibility of being elevated to the starting roster or coming in an emergency type situation. Your biggest focus that you have to do right now is elevate the floor of your depth, because the floor of your depth right now is terrible. And it was terrible through 4 preseason games. And that's why guys like we saw have been jettisoned. And that's why the Chargers only have 8 offensive linemen total right now, pending a 9th, which I truly believe is going to happen here in the next day or two. But depending on where the Chargers want to elevate, whether we're talking about the interior of the offensive line or at the tackle position, you look at Cole Strange, and obviously he's most notable for being a first-round pick that surprised a lot of people when the Patriots took him a couple years ago, but he's got versatility at both center and guard. Leo Collins. Dan, this is the one that I think that actually, if you were to make this move, this could be the emergency starter at tackle. Also has versatility enough to play, inside a guard if you need him to. He's obviously had his stints with the Cowboys, with the Bengals. He spent some time with Buffalo, but the kicker here is that he hasn't made a actual 53-man roster in the past 3 years. So great from the standpoint of the early portion of his career, because he's now 32 years old. But again, having those starter reps, he spent time on the practice squad for teams over the last 3 years. But still, if you needed something in an emergency type of situation, this is the one that I think could possibly do it for you. Now, you go to other ones. So you have Kenyon Green, who I know a lot of people were making note of, that was released earlier. Carter Warren, you try to go off some familiarity. And Carter Warren being at the Jets, you have that familiarity with Chad Alexander during the time that he was drafted. A lot of people, and I understand why, and myself included, are very excited. And I can tell you a lot of people from Chiefs Kingdom were pissed off that they let Issa Pole get out to a waiver possibility. A lot of Chiefs fans were pissed about this, considering the preseason that he had. And this is of note as well, Dan, because when the Chargers were going through their undrafted free agent crop, there was interest from the Chargers to bring in Pole to the roster. So possibly keep an eye out for this one. Again, this would be a nice developmental piece and a good, I think, elevation to the depth. Again, he's only exclusively played left tackle in that scenario. Familiar face, Dan, Jordan McFadden, who was released from the Chicago Bears. You talk about position versatility. He can play guard. He can play center. He's obviously familiar with spending time in this system before he was let go from the Chargers last year. He talked about watching training camp last year, standing next to Steve Hagelin on the closest side to the offense. And I think this, and if I'm right, this was in the time that Jim Harbaugh was basically testing out between Jordan McFadden and Scott Matlock who was going to win the fullback competition, because he was using Jordan McFadden at that position too. And all of a sudden we see Jordan McFadden go in motion and essentially go to the tight end spot. We're like, what the hell is going on? So he's got some position versatility, and a lot of people were surprised when he was originally cut from the Chargers roster last year. Tyree Phillips has familiarity with Joe Ortiz going back to 2020 when he was originally drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, and now he's spent some time in some different rosters as well. Dan, Liam Fornadell of the New York Jets had a very, very good preseason for himself. Guy who has spent time in the UFL before spending time with the Jets, has played center, has played guard, has played tackle. He's got a lot of versatility. I know you put Dan Skipper into this one as well, just for that veteran presence from the Detroit Lions. So there's a lot of options that are out here for the Chargers to possibly do. Again, probably the most likely scenario here, again, is you're looking to elevate the floor of the depth. I know that with all the question marks that we have regarding the offensive line, and notably Trey Pipkins, or how Zion Johnson going to do, or how Bradley Bozeman's going to do, I think you have those two positions. I think you have your backup set in Jamari Sawyer and Andre James for those roles. You got to add some more depth in some different areas. So
Okay.
these are just a handful of options, but
And that's
let's see
just
what
the
happens.
offensive line, by the way. He saw some
Yes.
cuts that you were surprised about. Now, let's be real here for a sec. Should we set expectations on improving the starting five between now and the start of week one? Like, just given timing and given the realities, unless something crazy happens, the odds of them improving the starting five seem to be slim. Now, you could argue some of these names you might see a higher potential than some of the guys you have on the five currently. I don't know, man. Like, I just don't know if any of these guys I should say, are more comfortable with starting in roughly a week and a half's worth of time on this team than the guys they currently have.
Exactly. Even if there was a situation where, as to say, Leo Collins ended up signing with the Chargers, he's not going to get the starting position over Trey Pipkins right out of the gate. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to bring someone in off the street who hasn't had any time playing next to any of these guys. The one thing that Trey Pipkins has going for him as far as being the starter goes is that he's had experience in this system, and he's got familiarity and spending training camp over the past several months with the guys in these rosters. So even if you have a guy like that come in, I don't believe that they're going to overtake Trey Pipkins to start on week one. Specifically, just they need to get acclimated, and they need to do it fast. Now, agree or disagree, but to Dan's point, there's a reason why most teams keep 9 to 10 offensive linemen. You just don't have the starters that are going to be released by other teams because they covet them so much. And whether they're starters or whether they're key depth pieces, they're not really going to release the ones that they feel are their best options to come in and not have a huge drop off if someone goes down with an injury. So again, it would be obviously ideal, and I think that the Chargers will add an offensive lineman here in the next 24 to 48 hours. It could be one of these names. It may not be. It could be a completely different situation. Who knows? We'll see what Joe Ortiz ends up pulling off. But at the very least right now, you're looking to elevate the floor of your depth of your offensive line.
Marcus says, we traded for someone, so I doubt we sign anybody. Would like to have Skipper, though.
You only have 8 offensive linemen.
You're getting one. There's no way they don't.
With what you have, and if someone goes down with an injury, I don't care who it is, you have to add another body into there.
Right now, your only tackle right now is Sawyer. After, well, I guess now technically you got the new guy from Houston, but
it's not good. It's not good.
Not great, Bob.
No.
It's not great. Replace Bozeman before you replace Zion. And again, I think glaring, and it's fitting that Chargers fans are all now fully aligned with tip of the spear Jim Harbaugh. And everyone's like, come on, Jim. Where are we? Alan says Joe's waited way too long trying to fix his offensive line. He should have taken care of it before OTAs.
Yeah, I actually thought that before the trade that took place today, I thought a good trade candidate for the Chargers in terms of veteran presence and that could possibly step in to be a good emergency option if necessary was Ryan Van DeMark from Buffalo. There was talks about him possibly being traded out to other teams for a 6th-round pick because they had such a good offensive lineman step up during preseason that could unseat him. And there was talk to say, okay, they may keep one, they may keep both, one may get traded. So that was the name that was floated out there. And I honestly thought that if it was for a late round pick, that could be a good option. But again, as I was just saying, the teams keep the best offensive linemen. They ended up keeping both over there in Buffalo. So that one looked like it was off the table for the Chargers. There's just not that many options. If you're trying to look for someone to come in and replace a starter, you're not going to find it at this point of the season. So I get what everybody's talking about in terms of timing. I've spoken a lot about that, more specifically at the center position. I know Seth McLaughlin was released earlier today. I know Willie Lampkin was released earlier today, but I don't think that they're going to do anything there with the fact that you now have Andre James on this roster. But yeah, Dan and I have talked about it sparingly over the last couple of months in terms of outside of the Branson Taylor draft pick, you thought that they might have done something a little bit earlier, or since the Rashawn Slater injury, brought in a more notable name.
Jake, we got about 10 minutes or so. Let's put some time in here for some rapid fire comments, topics, questions. Do us a favor, put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer these. And I think I blew through so many at the very, very beginning, so I might have to scroll up a tad, Jake. But this is going to make you feel real good inside. By the way, how's your cup? Is it empty?
Oh, it's empty.
You didn't fill it again? Your cup emptieth overeth?
Yeah, I'm not an alcoholic, but thanks for trying to make me one here
Wow.
on Chargers Unleashed.
Wow, shots fired. Okay, a non-dairy, Jake. This is going to make you feel just as good as that scotch does, or bourbon, or whatever it is you're drinking. Jake, focus only on offensive line and edge for next year's draft. 6 picks and so many needs along the offensive line and edge.
Dan, let's go to the spreadsheet right now. I got the whole spreadsheet worked out. Let's talk about the prospects for the 2026 NFL Draft. Here we go. It's April 1st. We are 3 weeks away from the NFL Draft. Let's go.
Fuck, that can't get here soon enough.
You just whisper the word draft in NFL in the same sentence as Jake. He just goes from 6 to midnight, 2 seconds.
Damn.
Let's see. I'm concerned about the offensive line. Join the club. One of the 12 DBs will be moved to the practice squad IR/traded for a 9th offensive line. Jake, you talked about that. That's a position group to look for. Let's see. Brian says, I agree. They're set at their starting offensive line. I would like if they focused on, well, I don't know. Left tackle, Overton, Jake Slaughter, Tristan Lee. Jake, anything you know about those guys?
Jake Slaughter. Dan, I've been talking about Jake Slaughter for almost a year now. Again, the center position in general, and here I go on this fucking rant again. The center position for the 2025 NFL Draft just got turned upside down with the players that at that position that were highly coveted that ended up sustaining some injuries late in the season, or guys that ended up returning back to college. Jake Slaughter, in my opinion, last year was one of the most consistent centers, if not the most consistent, and now he's viewed as possibly center one heading into 2026. So he plays well. So if you're not familiar with Jake Slaughter, watch him, because offensive line should definitely be a priority for the Chargers, as well as a number of other positions highly. But this is always how great the college football season is and how it pairs with the NFL season, is that these things change and priorities change and draft values change. And again, I love me some Jake Slaughter, but let's see where we're at come April.
Papa Chongo, if I'm saying that correctly. Y'all gonna be surprised. Hence, whoop the Chiefs' ass next Friday.
Personally, I think given the offensive line situation right now.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was in my head, I'm thinking like 5 minutes ago. I was already like thinking to week 1 preview and the dynamic of us and how it shifted over the years. Like, I used to be this eternal optimist, rosy glasses, half full, everything.
Yeah.
And then I was just absolutely broken. And now, I tether my optimism to reality and try to keep some truth serum and stay level. And weirdly, Jake went from being like the pessimist, the guy who can never have nice things, to all of a sudden he's just doing backflips. But I'm curious, I'm curious now, like, this maybe gives me a little glimpse into what we're going to see this year, because that did not sound overly optimistic heading into week 1.
No, it wasn't. And trust me, I've been really optimistic about the Chargers going into the Chiefs and beating them. That was before the Rashawn Slater injury, though. And given the fact that Mekhi Becton only has recently practiced, and given the fact that the Chargers are actually running it back with the same combo of Zion Johnson and Bradley Bozeman, which is something I just really thought as the preseason played itself out, that was not going to happen after what you saw in the Houston Texans game last year. I just didn't think that was going to happen. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I'll definitely say that my confidence has diminished a little bit. Hence the reasons that I was talking about earlier this week. Those first 3 weeks.
Oh, I know.
That's going to be a hell of a test for this offensive line. In terms of running the ball, protecting Justin Herbert, what are you going to be able to do? What are you going to be able to do?
Now, the opposite of Jake is Chemist R1. Crappy offensive line, no problem. Omarion will truck his way to positive yards. Love that. Jada Will right there with him. Omarion Hampton and Najee will hopefully spare us a bit in the run and pass game. Yeah, I'm with it. Jake, one question I had for you. Other than offensive line, we kind of went deep on that for a bit. What other position groups could you low-key maybe see like a sneaky claim for? I think about like running back and only having 3. Like that seems questionable. I'm not sure there. And there were some running backs that were released. I'm not sure if there's any receivers that were released.
No.
Tight end, no.
No.
Edge, veteran, maybe.
I don't see anybody coming in to unseat anyone on the starting roster as it stands right now outside of the spot that you have at offensive line.
But even then, you said we're not going to be doing an offensive line starter upgrade.
Well, yes, but you're still going to be ended up making...
Oh, a spot, 53.
Yes,
okay.
Getting that spot and being a reserve offensive lineman and technically being active on Sundays. But outside of that, I don't see anybody coming in outside that's going to unseat any of the starters that we have talked about, both on offense and defense. I just don't see it.
Yeah, running back might be one to look for. I don't think receiver. I think they're good. There's some people in the chat saying they need to upgrade the receivers. I disagree. I think they have really good depth there. I think they have good skill position, and they have some contrast and skill types there. Defensive line, interior, I think they're good. Corner, I think you'll definitely see some movement on corner. Whether that brings people in or not, different story, but I don't think that's going to stay as is. Ryan saying possibly long snapper. That's only a short-term thing. I don't know how that's going to happen. Hanan says edge. No need to worry about running backs since Najee never misses a game. Well, let's pump the brakes there. We'll see.
Yeah, I just don't think that the fact that they have 5 edges on the team in the way that if you're going off the mentality of competitors welcome and playing yourself on the roster, Caleb Murphy's done that. And I don't think that they're all of a sudden going to take that away from him. And there's a caveat with that. Kyle Kennard has battled some injuries throughout preseason. He's not quite where he needs to be. So you have that there. I understand why that might be position of focus. I know there's been some talk about Zadarius Smith possibly becoming available. And I can understand why that could be a target, but I just don't see that end up happening.
QJ, question mark. Again, like, in context, right? Like if Quentin was your wide receiver 1, you'd be concerned. If he is your wide receiver 2, in terms of like reliability, he'd be your concern. He's fighting for wide receiver 4 right now, 3-4 between him, KLS, and Trey Harris. Like we're talking about bottom of the roster, bottom of the depth at least. Quentin Johnson, who this team is still high on. And it looks like he's back in practice now. So he's trending in the right direction. Like, I don't know. I just don't. People are way low on him, man. It's unfortunate. No more demon Jalen Reagor. Yeah, I hope he comes back in the practice squad for sure. Chemist R1. Ortiz done a decent job, in my opinion. Chargers were way over the cap, and he fixed that. Drafted good players in Still and Hart. Gave them a couple more years. I think he meant way over the cap. Oh, 2 years ago. Yes. This year, they got a lot of money to spend, by the way. Like, if they wanted to go out and get a free agent that doesn't exist, like, they could get him.
Guys, just remember who we had for 10 years in that seat where Joe Ortiz sits now. We haven't even given him a full second season. Don't cut the ties to it yet. If you want to look at what's remaining from this draft class right now, he's possibly drafted you 4 offensive skill players for Justin Herbert that every single one of them could contribute in their rookie season. You go out and you get undrafted free agents like Wax, Reed, Rogers, who all ended up making the initial 53. Aside from Branson Taylor, I didn't even mention Mickens in that conversation, but outside of Taylor and Bridges that ended up getting released, I mean, look how much we relished Joe Ortiz for hitting a 1-2 punch with Joe Alt and Ladd McConkey last year. And that was just those two. Then you had Cam Hart and Tarheeb Still rise up throughout the season. And I'll go back to saying it. Remember who the individual was for 10 years in that seat before Joe Ortiz. Remember that. Joe Ortiz has pulled off more trades on this roster that have been more productive, or signed guys off the street that have been more productive in less than 2 seasons played than the other guy ended up making throughout his 10 years here. Let's give it some time to breathe.
G-Pal Money. This is ultimate copium right now. I feel like there's a reason to be optimistic. We almost beat the Chiefs last year, if not for a doink, and it was without Ladd. How many times have Chargers fans been able to say the following? I feel like there's a reason to be optimistic. We almost beat the Chiefs last year, if not for a blank, and it was without blank. Like, that happens literally every year. I think they've won 20 of the last 22 games against this Chargers team. Like, it's sickening.
And they just kept 8 wide receivers in their final 53-man cut.
And somehow Rashee Rice is still on track to play week 1. SoCal Bolts fan. Joe Ortiz is having to fix 11 years of poor roster building. After next year's draft, this thin O-line can be fixed.
Yeah, it can. And again, are we having, I think that to some extent we'd still be having the conversation. I mean, Dan and I were talking about it after the draft, and we talked about it the month since. But guys, if Rashawn Slater is healthy, which is not Joe Ortiz's fault, we're not having the conversation to the extent that we are now. And I fully understand the reasons why we're having the conversation to this level right now, given the fact of who has to step in certain places, and guys that weren't practicing, and guys that you're running it back with. But take note, Zion Johnson, as of this year, is in a contract year. His 5th-year option was not picked up. Bradley Bozeman, I don't think it's any guarantee that he's going to stick around past this year. Same thing goes for Trey Pipkins. They will prioritize offensive line again, whether it's for their own desire or for sheer necessity. I guarantee you it will get better, and it'll be better when Rashawn Slater returns.
This one hurts your soul, I know, but Tremont Moore is brash or Kyle Kennard?
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a 1-to-1 comparison, given the fact that Kennard was going through a little bit of injuries, and he hasn't had the year under his belt that Tremont Morris Brash has to pick up. But hey, I will say this about Tremont Morris Brash. I thought he looked phenomenal throughout the preseason. If you take the tape that you watched of him last year, last year, and compare it to this year, that's a huge jump for him. And I honestly think that he would have ended up making the 53-man roster if it wasn't for Caleb Murphy. So I would love it if the Chargers end up stashing him on the practice squad. I think that he's great as a reserve edge player. Just big body, gets after the quarterback, knows how to speed rush, and he did a great job of setting the edge in the run game this year too. So hats off to him.
Jake, I think we are at the tail end of this thing. My biggest concern, says Chemist R1, is Greg Roman's play calling. Hope it gets better, but not getting my hopes up. I think we're going to see a different play calling this year.
I think it's going to get better. I don't have any doubts about that. I really don't.
And the reason why, honestly, and I think it's less about play calling, honestly, and it's more about just the sheer talent infused into this offensive roster at skill positions. Like, again, it's easy to forget Omarion Hampton, Najee Harris, Oronde Gadsden, Tyler Conklin, Trey Harris, Keandre Lambert-Smith, Keenan Allen. So what's that, 7? That's 7 dudes they added for Justin Herbert, plus Mekhi Becton. I know, minus Rashawn Slater, but like 7 dudes that Justin Herbert can now rely on, not including Ladd. Like, it's pretty good. So we've talked about this. I know the offensive line scares people, but I've said this so many times. In order to win in this league, you have to have, on offense specifically, a good run game, an excellent offensive line to protect, or a lot of weapons so that the quarterback can get rid of it quickly. Right now, in my heart of hearts, I believe they have 2 of 3. Last year, unfortunately, they were going over. That's an improvement. So let's see how it plays out. Jake, anything else you want to tell the great friends before we dip on out of here?
I'm excited, Dan, that we get to talk about real football next week.
We're getting close, baby. We're getting close. Let's go.
For the love of God.
Let's go.
As much as I enjoyed watching the preseason, and again, as much as I enjoy seeing some of these names make this roster, when someone hits someone next week, it's going to count in the win-loss record. That's what I care about, and I'm excited to get there. 2025 season is nearly upon us. Let's get to Brazil.
Rocks and Jocks says, think how good. Oh, Jake, this is already giving me, imagine the euphoria vibes. Think how good it's going to be to see Keenan out there again, week 1. Dreams do really come true. Imagine all the Keenan jerseys out there.
That third preseason game, the first pass that Justin Herbert throws to Ladd McConkey. Just watching that replay of the 2 of them running routes right next to one another. Expand that times 100.
Yep. Man, this is fun. And honestly, someone mentioned the chat, Jake, but I would part with this. It was really cool to see the competitors welcome. I know some of the guys that didn't make it, people are upset about, and I think that there's some caveats there to let play out beforehand, but to see Nikko Reed make this team, to see Eric Rodgers make this team, to see Marlowe Wax make this team, even Caleb Murphy, it's been cool to see guys who stake their name, who kind of not rags to riches, but were able to take the opportunity that was given to them and just go fly. And for this front office to reward that, to reward the talent that was in here, that came to us, that the coaching staff brought in and developed, that's cool to see. We haven't seen that very often. We see UDFAs maybe once a year, but we have not seen a collective depth perform this way. And so with preseason games now complete, that was kind of the shining memory for me, was how many dudes impacted this offseason. And now we get to see how many of them are impacting this regular season starting week 1. Jake, this has been fun. We're now over 1,100 folks in the chat, going on an hour strong. Y'all are incredible. Again, for Jake Sleeves, who have ghosted us today, you can find Jake at Jake Hefner. Myself, I just said you can find Jake at Jake Hefner. Jake at Jake T. Hefner. myself at Dan W Sports. Again, please do us one quick favor and hit the subscribe button. Wait, Jake, you're great at impressions. Do that. What's the guy's name from Camp Nowhere? What's the, you know what I'm talking about? Christopher Walken. Did you do Christopher Walken impression? Come on. Get off of mute. Come on.
First of all, I'm not on mute.
Okay, great.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
What if you could, go on to Chargers Unleashed and hit a like and subscribe. That would just really help out the channel. Wolldog can still do Walken better than me.
That was good. I needed that.
Wolldog is still the king of impressions.
I needed that. Folks in the chat, thank you all so much, guys, gals, children of all ages. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night from Chargers Unleashed. And we will talk to you next time. See ya later on the other side.